Kellie Castle is an abandoned British colonial-era mansion located in the middle of palm oil estate near Batu Gajah in the state of Perak. Located on top of a hill in the middle of palm oil estate, Kellie Castle located about 2 kilometers from the nearest town Batu Gajah and 12 kilometers from Ipoh, the state capital of Perak. The mansion is a manifest of a story of a British businessman, his perseverance after multiple failures, love of his spouse, and a desire of a cozy house for a larger family. Why was the large mansion was built in the estate far from the major city, and why was the construction was halted and never finished? Let's walk among the ruins and understand of why Kellie Castle was left unfinished for more than a century. Perak once was the largest producer of tin ore in the world in the 19th and early 20th century. Tin ore, its scientific name stannum, has many uses: alloy for bronze and pewter, solder for electric wires, and most importantly, food canning. On the manufacturer side, tin never rusts, lighter than glass, malleable and recyclable. Tin can make the food last longer and preserve the taste and nutrition better than previous food preservation methods such as salting and drying. As a result, high price of tin caused the instability of Perak when Larut Wars 1861 until 1874 happened due to disputes of tin mine ownership and later the dispute of Perak throne succession. Instability in Perak caused British to intervene as British was the largest buyer of Perak tin, and the prolonged Larut War caused the disruption of the tin supply. British officially colonized Perak with the signage of Pangkor Agreement on 20th of January 1874, assuming the control of the external affairs and most of the internal affairs of the state. British colonial brought prospectors and Chinese labourers to Kinta district to mine large deposits of tin that caused Kinta tin rush between 1884 until 1889. Later, British introduced rubber trees as a new cash crop due to favourable condition of growing rubber trees in Malaysia and high rubber price due to popularity of automobile. During the time of relative prosperity, a number of British-born prospectors arrived in Malaya to seek a better fortune in a far-flung colony. One of the prospectors is Scottish-born Mr. Kellie Smith. By looking of how impressively large Kellie's castle is, the mansion was built neither by a colonial officer nor the nobility. Who was the owner of the mansion and the estate that surrounding the mansion? William Kellie Smith was an estate owner that made his fortune by rubber plantation and tin mining. According to Libiding's online genealogical search provided by Moray Council, he was born as William Smith in 1870 in Dallas, Scotland, and has 4 siblings. Trained as a civil engineer, he arrived at Perak in 1890 and switching careers until he landed a job in surveying works for railways and road under Charles Alma Baker. With the money he saved when he worked under Charles Alma Baker, he bought land to plant coffee at first. However, Smith was hit by business misfortunes when he tried and failed in his business ventures such as railway ballast, civil engineering firm and coffee plantation. He switched his estate from planting low-priced coffee to rubber trees, which has high price and high demand, uplifting him economically and socially. In 1903, William Smith returned to Kellie, Scotland to visit his ailing mother and later her funeral. Smith adapted his mother's maiden surname, Kellie Smith, which is how Kellie's castle got his name. When Smith bought the estate in Batu Gajah, he built a wooden bungalow named Kellie's House after his birthplace. En route to return to Malaya after his mother's funeral in 1903, William met a young heiress named Agnes and they were married in the same year. A year later, Agnes gave birth to Helen, the first child of the couple. However, Agnes could not withstand the tropical heat in their wooden bungalow. Thus, she spent the time at the hill stations such as Keledang Hill near Manglembu, Maxwell's Hills in Taiping, and Fraser's Hill in Western Pahang. Therefore, Kellie Smith added a brick house next to his wooden bungalow that was completed in 1909, which is the yellow walled ruins today. Colonial brick house insulate heat better than the wooden house or even the modern house due to the thickness of the wall and the construction material used. As concrete is not available at that time, the bricks were binded with a mixture of dark egg whites, sand, chalk, brown sugar and honey. It sounds like a cake recipe. The house became the place for social gathering of British businessmen with food, balls and dancing. Why were they dancing? Why did Kellie Smith build his residence in the middle of estate, far from Ipoh? It is common practice for the nobles and wealthy back in Britain to build the castles and houses in their own land away from the cities. Building castles in an estate away from the city symbolizes higher social status, provide a privacy space, ability to play the outdoor sports, and less air and noise pollution. Furthermore, it was fashionable for the young men in the Victorian era in the 19th century to show off their success and wealth while building large house, a large mansion to accommodate the whole family, to keep securely all the riches and to hold all the parties. To maintain his lavish lifestyle, Kellie Smith borrowed 24,000 straight settlement dollars to develop Kellie's estate. He ventured in marble, tin mining, distillery and ranching industries, all were ended up in failure. To cover the losses, William relied on the inheritance from Agnes as she inherited 300,000 straight settlement dollars as a cotton heiress from Liverpool. However, the bank postponed the inheritance payment from 1906 to 1908 due to non-performing loans in Batavia, which is today Jakarta, Indonesia. In desperation, he tried to borrow 50,000 straight settlement dollars from the colonial government and used Agnes' inheritance payment as collateral. But the British resident was unconvinced, pretty skeptical, and only borrowed $10,000. To remain afloat, Kellie Smith was forced to sell 2/3 of his estate to a company, Harrisons and Crossfield, in 1906, but remained as the director of his former estate. Agnes' inheritance was eventually released in 1908 with the promised sum of 300,000 straight settlement dollars. To give a picture of how much is 300,000 straight settlement dollars at that time, the amount is similar with the cost of building Victoria Bridge, a 350-meter railway bridge crossing Perak River in Enggor, Perak, the largest public project in Malaysia when it was completed. To understand the level of financial hardship faced by the Kellie Smith, his former Kelle's estate in Elgin, Scotland, UK, has no more connection with the Kellie Smith family and his survivors today. According to Dallas History UK website, Kellie's estate was sold in 1912 to Christie family, who built the current Kellie's estate mansion near Elgin, Scotland. The same statement did not mention who was the previous owner of Kellie's estate. When Agnes gave a birth to Anthony Kellie Smith in 1915, William wanted a larger house fit for his vision of a large family. 70 craftsmen from India were brought into the mansion site, and the construction materials such as bricks and marbles were imported as well. The importation is possible with the existence of a railway network that brought the materials and labourers from Penang to Batu Gajah, a large residence to show off his success from a common man raised in Elgin into a well-to-do estate owner. Kellie's castle is an impressive project not only due to its size but also due to its unique architecture and amenities. If completed, Kellie's castle would be the largest residence in British Malaya, larger than any other residences, larger than the former royal palace, which is Istana Negara, and larger than the residence of British resident of Perak in Taiping, who refused to loan Kellie Smith extra 40,000 straight settlement dollars back in 1906. Kellie's castle has 4 stories with 14 rooms and an indoor tennis court and 4 secret passages. The original entrance was located near the present entrance between the Kellie's house and the unfinished mansion. Based on the old photographs, the original road that led to Kellie's castle was from the south, of which the mansion might likely to be connected to Batu Gajah via a road and a bridge. The A1 road on the north was built much later. Therefore, the familiar front of Kellie's castle is actually the back side. Because concrete was not available during its construction, wood logs were installed as the floors on the upper level. The floor is safer today than the original as the wood floor is supported by post-restoration concrete floor beneath it. Smith chose Indo-Saracenic architecture design that is unique and exotic yet common in colonial-era buildings such as Sultan Abdul Samad Building and Kuala Lumpur Railway Station. I talked about Kuala Lumpur Railway Station in the previous video, where the former main railway station of Kuala Lumpur is designed to withstand the snow, the pile of snow, in a country where snow never fell down and no winter ever experienced. If you want to know more, if you want to know why, the link to watch this video is above right here. Therefore, the completed Kellie's castle will have domes on top, big dome above the lift shaft and small dome above the emergency staircase. In fact, it was the British who introduced the domes into the Malaysian architecture when Indian labourers were brought to Malaya to build the colonial buildings. Indian builders are accustomed to build the domes that are symbol of Indo-Saracenic architectures. Domes allow a large space to be enclosed without any pillar, and it allows the building to be seen from far away. Prestige. In addition, Victorian-era British were interested with the exotic Indo-Saracenic architecture that combined the Indian, Persian and Moorish architecture. Where is the proof that the British are the one that introduced the dome into Malaya? Mosques that were built before the British colonization was built with the indigenous design of pyramid-like roof and no dome, such as Kampung Laut Mosque in Palembang, Kelantan, Kampung Keling Mosque and Tengkerah Mosque in Melaka, and Aceh Street Mosque in Penang. In this channel, we should not look upon the transportation that bring us forward, but also the transportation that moves forward, bring us upward. The tower at the eastern end of the mansion contains guest rooms and a shaft. It was presumed that the shaft is built to accommodate a lift, a luxury in the early 20th century. By climbing onto the top of the lift shaft, you might understand why Kellie Smith wanted to build his opulent mansion at Batu Gajah in the first place. The view is simply mesmerizing. The misfortunes that hit Smith before he was successful in the rubber plantation business struck him and the family again when the World War I was started in 1914. The war caused the increase of construction materials as the supply is limited and the danger of ships sailing across the war zone. After the war subsided, another misfortune hit in the year 1918. Spanish flu that has killed millions across the globe eventually reached Malaya and killed the labourers both in mansion construction and the estate. The surviving labourers requested Kellie Smith to allow them to build a temple nearby the mansion, and he agreed. As a symbol of gratitude, the statue of Kellie Smith is standing next to the Hindu deities in Sri Mahamariamman Temple, about 500 meters west of Kellie's castle. Together with the slump of the global rubber price due to oversupply, he needed to find more investment opportunities to maintain his lavish lifestyle. Kellie Smith tried to open a semi-residential resort near Cameron Highlands in 1925, but later gave up and decided to purchase a concession of an estate in Portuguese Timor to the Timor-Leste. When Kellie Smith left British Malaya to Britain in 1926, the voyage that would be his last. When he was en route to Britain, he stopped at Lisbon to finalize the purchase of an estate in Timor. However, he caught with pneumonia and died in his hotel room on 11th of December 1926. The death of Kellie Smith caused the death of his granddaughter's project as well. Agnes has no interest to stay in Malaya, thus she sold the mansion and the remaining estate land to a British company, Harrisons and Crossfield. The company has no interest of continuing the Kellie Smith expensive vanity project that once called Kellie's Folly. According to Cambridge Dictionary, folly is a building in the form of a small castle or temple, etc. that has been built as a decoration in a large garden or park. In other words, folly is an expensive garden decoration without any practical purpose. The combination of Kellie's demise, change of the land ownership, the location of the mansion far away from major city Ipoh, and the expensive cost of construction makes Kellie's castle project abandoned by the new landowner. When the World War I reached Malaya in 1942, Kellie's house was bombed, but the unfinished structures survived. According to the locals, not everything was left when Kellie's castle was abandoned. There are claims that the spirits of William and Helen are wandering around the unfinished mansion, specifically at the first floor where the bedrooms are. It should be noticed that the William Kellie Smith died in Lisbon, Portugal, which is the half the world distance away from Perak. Remember the genealogy database from Moray Council that has been shown earlier? According to the record of Moray Council, it was the brother of William, Alexander Smith, who was died in Kellie's house due to heart failure in 1907. Perhaps that record might explain the apparition that was claimed by the visitors of Kellie's castle. It might be Alexander instead of William. If you want to feel scary, easier and more intense, just go to the nearby supermarket and look at the price tag. Rubber trees surrounding the mansion ruins were replaced by palm oil trees when the price and demand of the palm oil went up. Today, Kinta Kellie's estate is part of Samdabi Plantation, a major palm oil producer in Malaysia. The historic value of Kellie's castle started to be appreciated in the late 20th century as it should be the largest colonial house ever built in Malaysia. Granddaughter of William Kellie Smith, Frances Boston Smith, has visited the mansion and donated the old photos of Kellie's house that previously was presumably lost. Old photos give the clearer picture, literally, of how Kellie's house was before it was destroyed by bomb in 1942. Restoration works has started in year 2000 to clear out the overgrowth trees and vandalism acts. In 2013, improvements have been added to ensure the safety of the visitors, such as railings, nets and warning signs. Information signs has been added as well. Thus, Kellie's castle today has better safety features than many years back. Kellie's castle has turned from the abandoned haunted mansion into a popular tourist destination. The abandoned mansion becomes one of the most recognizable tourist attractions in Perak, attracting local and foreign tourists. On the day I visited Kellie's castle, there was a bus carrying tourists from Thailand. Other than the historical visit, Kellie's castle becomes the place for a wedding photo shoot due to its unique architecture and rustic surroundings. Taj Mahal of Batu Gajah. The expansion of Ipoh suburb outward nearing Batu Gajah may alter the wide expansive view of palm oil trees to suburban housing in a few years, as Ipoh keep expanding its suburban due to high-rise ban until the last decade, which makes the city strongly dependent on cars, NIMBY attitudes, and a place for American right-wing nationalism. Today, Kellie's castle remains on its unfinished shape, attracting local and foreign tourists to explore its ruins. Standing tall in the middle of the estate, awaiting for its owner that will never visit his granddaughter's mansion in Perak ever again. If you want to visit Kellie's castle, the abandoned mansion is located 2 km east of Batu Gajah town near A8 Road. By train or bus, the nearest town is Batu Gajah, where there is KTM ETS service from Kuala Lumpur, Ipoh and Penang. From Batu Gajah to Kellie's castle, you need to find a taxi or self-arrange a transport. By private vehicle, exit at Kopeng if coming from the south, such as Kuala Lumpur, or Simpang Pulai if coming from the north, and follow the sign. The ticket price is 5 ringgit for the Malaysians and 10 ringgit for the foreigners. The mansion is only accessible by stairs and might causing mobility issues as the delivery of the lift is already 1 century late. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about Kellie Castle and its second life as a major tourist attraction in Perak. Thank you so much for watching again and see you in the next video.